vallabha girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotra Srimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ke Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ke Shri Mayapur Dham ke Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Shakshurum Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Scham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitam Scha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sungyavadi Pastyatya Shatarine. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishware Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the third canto, chapter 21, entitled Conversation between Manu and Kardama. Text number 15. Please repeat. Tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya. Bolo. Tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya. Ladies. tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ durāśayaḥ kāma-dughāṅghripasya tathā cāhaṁ parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ samāna-śīlāṁ gṛha-medha-dhenum upeyivān mūlam aśeṣa-mūlaṁ tathā. Similarly, saha, myself, cha, also, aham, I, parivoḍhu-kāmaḥ, desiring to marry, samāna-śīlāṁ, a girl of like disposition, gṛha-medha, in married life, dhenum, a cow of plenty, upeyivān, have approach, mūlam, the root, lotus feet, aśeṣa, of everything, mūlam, the source, durāśayaḥ, with lustful desire, kāma-dugha, yielding all desires, aṅghripasya, of you who are the tree. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is Kardama Muni addressing the Lord. Famous verse. Therefore, desiring to marry a girl of like disposition, who may prove to be a veritable cow of plenty in my married life, to satisfy my lustful desire, I too have sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of everything, for you are like a desired tree. Purport. In spite of his condemning persons who approach the Lord for material advantages, Kardama Muni expressed his material inability and desire before the Lord by saying, although I know that nothing material should be asked from you, I nevertheless desire to marry a girl of like disposition. The phrase like disposition is very significant. Formerly, boys and girls of similar dispositions were married. The similar natures of the boy and girl were united in order to make them happy. Not more than 25 years ago, and perhaps it is still current, parents in India used to consult the horoscope of the boy and girl to see whether there will be factual union in their psychological conditions. These considerations are very important. Nowadays, marriage takes place without such consultation, and therefore, soon after the marriage, there is divorce and separation. Formerly, husband and wife used to live together peacefully throughout their whole lives. But nowadays, it is a very difficult task. Kardama Muni wanted to have a wife of like disposition because a wife is necessary to assist in spiritual and material advancement. It is said that a wife yields the fulfillment of all desires in religion, economic development, and sense gratification. If one has a nice wife, he is to be considered a most fortunate man. In astrology, a man is considered fortunate who has great wealth, very good sons, or a very good wife. Of these three, one who has a very good wife is considered the most fortunate. Before marrying, one should select a wife of like disposition and not be enamored by so-called beauty or other attractive features for sense gratification. In the Bhagavatam, 12th canto, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, marriage will be based on the consideration of sex life. As soon as there is deficiency in sex life, the question of divorce will arise. Kardama Muni could have asked his benediction from Uma, for it is recommended in the scriptures that if anyone wants a good wife, he should worship Uma. But he preferred to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it is recommended in the Bhagavatam that everyone, whether he is full of desires, has no desire, or desires liberation, should worship the Supreme Lord. Of these three classes of men, one tries to be happy by fulfillment of material desires, another wants to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme, and another, the perfect man, is a devotee. He does not want anything in return from the personality of Godhead. He only wants to render transcendental loving service. In any case, everyone should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he will fulfill everyone's desire. The advantage of worshipping the Supreme Person is that even if one has desires for material enjoyment, if he worships Krishna, he will gradually become a pure devotee and have no material hankering. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So once again, thank you all for being here and seeking your blessings, particularly of the senior Vaishnavas, some senior Grihastas here also. This verse is a verse which is very important for all devotees, particularly for those who are transitioning into the Grihasta ashram. It gives some hope. And it's very interesting that I will say that this verse and the previous verse go together, because in the previous verse, Kardama Muni is condemning or saying that only a fool will ask for some material benediction from the Lord. But I am such a fool. I will ask. So it reflects on Kardama Muni's honesty and Kardama Muni's humility, that he is not pretending in front of the Lord. He's just presenting himself, like they say, clear slate. And the Lord very much appreciates this kind of attitude, because if we don't come like that, first of all, he has to make us see what we are not seeing, right? That we may be sweeping around below the carpet something that is there and we don't want to confront. In this case, the desire for marriage. I think things are changing, but when I joined the movement, marriage was considered like a fall down, more or less. I mean, at least the temple where I was, it was like a step down. And Prabhupada here in this purport is explaining that actually it can be a step up. It was a step up in the case of Kardama Muni. And Prabhupada says Kardama Muni wanted to have a wife of like disposition because a wife is necessary to assist in spiritual and material advancements. It is said that a wife yields the fulfillment of all desires in religion, economic development, and sense gratification. So, it's good to marry or it's not good to marry? Well, it depends. For those who need it, marriage is a step up. For those who don't need it, marriage is a step down. But if we need it, we should do it in the mood of that is being reflected in this verse also. Prabhupada is giving various indications in the purport. Before we go about the point of selecting a good wife, I would like to focus, Prabhupada is again referring to the point that Kardama Muni could have approached Uma, but she approached Krishna. And in the verse, he is addressing Krishna as he's saying, yes, you are mūlam, aśeṣa-mūlaṁ, that you are like a desire tree. Your lotus feet are the root of everything. Therefore, they can fulfill all desires. So sometimes we are afraid to approach the Lord to fulfill some material desire. And it's rightly so, because the pure devotee doesn't ask anything from the Lord. But sometimes we may need something in our spiritual life which is could be seen as a material desire, but actually it is something that is going to help us advance spiritually. And this was the case with Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni is the son of Lord Brahma. He's a Prajapati. He has a service to do, to procreate. So he is asking the Lord, he's approaching the Lord for a suitable wife who may prove to be a cow of plenty and to satisfy my lustful desire. So, the Acharyas explain that the Lord, like he's compared to it's like a banyan tree, like a desire tree. But they say that the analogy is not complete, it's not perfect. You know, there is a difference between Krishna and a desire tree. What are the differences? Well, the desire tree is impartial. He will fulfill the desires of anyone who comes to him with any crazy desire. He will grant that desire. But Krishna, he says, Ananya chintayanto mam yeyana paripasate tesham nitya viyuktanam yoga kshema vahāmyaham. He is saying in that verse, in the second part of in that verse, he's saying that to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, with a desire for union with me, tesham nitya viyuktanam, I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. So Krishna actually is different from a desire tree, because Krishna actually serves his devotee. The desire tree doesn't serve anyone. He just stands there and grants desires. But Krishna personally takes great pleasure in fulfilling the desires of his devotee. And again, all these verses, they are giving us entrance to understand who Krishna really is. That he is our well-wisher. And the acharyas commenting on that verse explain that Krishna is very eager to assist that devotee who is sincerely serving him, despite our material qualifications. Krishna is looking for the sincerity of our purpose. That yes, Krishna, I shouldn't be asking for this. I have this desire. You please deal with it. How many of us have found ourselves in that situation? With a material desire and we cannot give it up? Anyone? Only me? It's a constant battle. It's a constant battle. Where is the hope? We just kind of curse ourselves for the rest of eternity because we are so fallen. No, we approach Krishna. You please help me. And in the case of the lustful desire, there is a varnashram system, there is a process by which we can become cleansed from that, and that is married life, Krishna conscious married life. So Krishna is eager. Prabhupada told the story of Arjunacharya. You probably all know the story that Arjunacharya was a Brahmana. He was, reading Srimad, the Bhagavad Gita, and he came to that verse, and he came to the word yoga, kshema, vahāmyaham. And he thought, Krishna doesn't personally do it. When I provide what they lack and I preserve what they have, Krishna doesn't himself do it. He has it done by someone, by his energies, by his servants. And he crossed the line vahami, and he wrote karomi. So, I have it done. Instead of I personally do, I have it done. And then he went on Madhukari. He was very poor, and he was begging. And then, while he was away, when he came back, he found his wife eating a succulent, like opulent food. And he was very inquisitive. What happened here? Because the wife never eats according to Vedic system before the husband arrives. So the wife said, how could you do this? How could you do this? How could you, beat those nice boys? And he said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, when you were away, these two beautiful boys, they came knocking on the door, and they said, hurry up, open the door. We brought this for you. And they brought ghee, fruits. There were all kinds of, rice, all kinds of items. And he said, please take it quickly. We need to run. He said, but why you want to go? He said, we don't want your husband to beat us up again. He said, my husband beating you up? He said, look in my back. And, this boy was very dark complexion. The other one was very white. They showed their back, and there was all bruises, and scratches on his back. And they just ran away. So then Arjunacharya, when he heard the story, he said, dark complexion and white. This is Krishna and Balaram, and you didn't recognize them. And then he understood what were the scratches on his back. He had scratched the verse in the Bhagavad Gita. He had changed the word. So with this story, Prabhupada is teaching us, is showing us that Krishna actually takes great pleasure in fulfilling the desires of his devotee. Because by fulfilling those desires, and this is again one of the difference between the banyan tree, the desire tree, and Krishna, is that when Krishna fulfilled our desires, he does it in a way that we can come closer to him, that we can become purified. A desire tree gives things, but Krishna gives himself. When we pray for Krishna, he actually he gives himself. And a desire tree is also free from any kind of emotions. But Krishna becomes attached to the devotee who approaches him. We see so many examples in the scriptures of how Krishna is Bhakta Vatsala. He is attached to his devotee. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, there are these 4 types of devotees who approach the Lord, because they are suffering in search of wealth, in search of knowledge, or in search of the absolute truth. And Krishna says that of all of them, the one in search for the absolute truth is the best. But he said, but all of them, they are good. They are all magnanimous souls. Why? They approach me. Someone may think, why we should burden Krishna with our material desires? It's not a burden for him. He can do it very easily. And he actually takes great pleasure in doing this. At the same time, we understand, again, that the devotee, the real desire, the innermost desire of the devotee is to become free from all desires. And Krishna knows that. And Krishna is going to fulfill our desires in such a way that we can become free from those desires. Prahlad Maharaj, he also he prays, "Oh my Lord, O best of the giver of benedictions, if you at all want to bestow a benediction upon me, please make my heart full of material desires, free from material desires." But we may not be at the level of Prahlad Maharaj at this moment. So it is perfectly, bona fide to us in this way. Okay, so that's one part of the purport, and which is in connection again with the previous verse. And again, we should reflect, we should be very introspective, because this verse is also teaching us to be truthful. One quality that is very much emphasized in the scriptures is simplicity. Simplicity is arjavan, or chateau vrite. The Prabhupada will say the Mother Yashoda is very simple. Simple means no duplicity. No duplicity. We come into Krishna consciousness, and it's a lot of pressure to, be of certain standard, and we are afraid to be ourselves sometimes, and to admit that I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. I have this difficulty, But unless we come to that point, it's going to be extremely difficult to overcome that difficulty. And it's not that we're going to announce it, publicly to everybody, hey, I have this problem. No, we should be very careful who we do it with. But we certainly should have someone whom we can share these anarthas, these problems. And we should present it to Krishna himself. If someone can fix it, it's Krishna. And again, I was making the comparison between the desire tree and Krishna. Krishna is our well-wisher. He knows what is in our heart. Actually, we don't need to tell him in one sense. He says that desire is like a fragrance, For Krishna is in the heart, he can smell it. You can just pretend, but he knows. And one more point in regards to this point about how Krishna fulfills is that in the connection with the story with Arjunacharya, is that we should trust Krishna. But that's what I was saying. It gives hope, because he's giving this prayer to Lord Vishnu, and we'll see in subsequent verses, what is Lord Vishnu's reply? How does he reply? Anyone knows what's coming in the following verses? He says, no worries, I have already arranged for it. I have already arranged for it. Manu will come in a few days. She has a very good wife, a very good daughter. She'll be perfect. This is Krishna. Krishna, is an essential aspect of our devotional practice, where we cultivate this firm faith that Krishna will help, that Krishna will provide whatever we need for our advancement in Krishna consciousness, and He will remove what is blocking our path. Okay? But part of this is also this honesty, and this also honest desire that, we want to advance. We want to become, like I said, okay, I want to get married. Yes. Most people will want to get married. Most people needs to get married. So we should do it in the proper way. And what is the proper way? The proper way is Krishna consciousness. That this union is actually going to help me to become more Krishna conscious. And what is the fruit of that union? Good progeny. So, this kind of condemnation of the grihastha ashram sometimes, or looking down, or is really a sign of immaturity actually, because all the ashrams are depending on the grihastha ashram. Without the grihastha ashram, we won't be born, basically. Everybody's born in the grihastha ashram. So while, we sympathize with those devotees, and I was very much benefited by this hard, strong encouragement to follow the path of renunciation and brahmacharya. At the same time, the truth is that most of us at one point will have to make this transition into the grihastha ashram, and we should enter into the proper perspective. So there are some very nice guidance being given here, and the most important one is that when we are selecting a partner, that partner should be samāna-śīlāṁ, of like disposition. Why it should be a wife of like disposition? And what does it mean of like disposition? Well, you're going to spend the rest of your life with that person, and like Prabhupada is saying, that most marriage in Kali Yuga take place by sexual attraction, right? Physical attraction. Oh, I'm falling in love. I'm falling in lust, basically, because there is some attraction that, according to modern experts, they say lasts for about 1.5 years, and after 1.5 years, that infatuation fades away. So, when marriage is based on this sexual attraction, is bound to fail. Because later on we find that you have to share the same space with this person 24 hours a day. And not only that, this person will bring out in you all kinds of things, not just the good ones. It will bring out, you will be able to see in your own heart things that you were not seeing when you were alone. So therefore, you have to be with someone who has a similar psychological disposition, similar, you could say, appreciation for Krishna consciousness, for spiritual practices, for living in a particular place, for children, even for food, for everything. You need to really study these, so that the natures are compatible. And then the very difficult task, incredible difficult task of being successful in the grihastha ashram becomes a lot more doable. Because the reality is that to succeed in the grihastha ashram is extremely difficult, right? We find that not just grihasthas, but gṛha-medhis in the outside world, the divorce rate or the separation rate is more than 50%, and that doesn't include the people who stay together, but stay together having a very bad relationship. So it's definitely not easy, and even within ISKCON we have seen that there has been many casualties. Like Prabhupada said, there is accidents even in the royal roads, right? So we have to take all kinds of precautions. And very important is before the marriage takes place, that selection of the partner is done according to the instructions of the Shastra. And Prabhupada, what is Prabhupada recommending here? He's saying that we should use astrology. Now, also we know that Anyavilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam nukulyena krishna nusinanam bhaktirutamada. Sometimes the Acharya explained that the devotee is not depending on other things than Krishna, not depending on astrology. Also, Prabhupada, the Acharya explained astrology. So, the main point, and I hope that I can convey this today, is that, and what is being reflected on this verse, is that we should depend on Krishna. We should really depend on Krishna for this, and we should depend on Krishna for everything, actually. We should trust Krishna. But while we're doing that, the way we express our sincerity and our, commitment and our surrender is that we do everything according to Krishna's system. And the system here is there that we should consult astrology. So what the astrology does, it will find some areas of compatibility. But what happens also nowadays is that to find a good astrologer is not so easy. So therefore we should make sure that we consult a few astrologers before making a final decision. And the astrologer will see what is the nature of the girl and what is the nature of the boy. And the Shastra explains that someone who is of a higher varna, a man who is of a higher varna should not marry, a man who is of certain varna should not marry a girl who is of a higher varna. So if a man is a Sudra or a Vaishya by nature, he should not marry a Brahman lady. Why? Because later on the natures will come up, and the Brahminical nature is cleanliness, is order, is the Vaishya nature is more about development, about economic development, making money. It's more passionate. This will create conflict. So therefore, the astrological thing is considered, and then also the parents of both the husband and the wife, they know their children very well. They know what their nature is. So they also understand if this is a good match or is not a good match. So we're talking here about arranged marriages, which is recommended in comparison to love marriages. So I don't know for those who live in the West, but for me it was definitely a foreign thing, these arranged marriages, when I first heard about it. Later on I realized actually no, also I'm from Spain. Even in good families in Spain, there are considerations. The senior people take, advice. But this is a very cultural part of society. In general, it's no consideration. So I was giving a class some years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was in Dubai. And I was giving a class, maybe it was this verse, or was some other verse, I don't know, but he was talking about arranged marriages. And I was giving a class to a group of ladies. It was only ladies, all Indian ladies, These were all professional ladies, in Dubai, they're all kind of well-to-do, pious. And I asked, so how many of you had an arranged marriage? 100%. They all raised their hands. I was shocked, And I asked, any of you saw your husband just on the day of the wedding? A few raised their hands, And I said, so are you happy in marriage? And they'll say, yeah, this kind of, Indian kind of smile, but simple, this simplicity of the Indian culture is so beautiful, In contrast with the arranged marriages, and this is a point that is very important to understand when we are also entering the Grihastha ashram, is that we are not entering in the mood of enjoying. We are entering in the mood of service. And when we are entering in the mood of service, what happens is when it's an arranged marriage and they're both husband and wife in that mood, then lo and behold, love will manifest. But we enter the marriage with a desire for sense enjoyment. What happens is that the sense enjoyment dwindles, then the marriage breaks. So we consult the parents, we consult astrology, we consult the devotees, and we see if this is a good match. And it should be done very carefully, because this is perhaps one of the most impactful decisions in someone's life. If you make the wrong decision, big problem. And if you make the right decision, like Prabhupada is saying here, that a man is considered fortunate if he has wealth, and if he has good sons, and if he has a good wife. But of all of them, the most fortunate one is the one that has a good wife. So I don't know how relevant this is for some of you. Maybe you're already married, or you're not thinking of getting married, but these points are very important for the ISKCON society, that we know, and even if it doesn't apply to us at this particular moment, I'm sure it applies to someone that is in our circle of influence. And we should know what the standard is, and we should know how to advise. And when someone, as I said, when someone has a material desire, it's very encouraging to hear that Krishna doesn't reject us. He doesn't push us, Kardama Muni, you just been performing tapasya for 60,000 years. And what is the result of your tapasya? You're asking for a wife. What kind of guy are you? What kind of devotee are you? That's not the mood. Krishna is, no worries, I know about this, I already arranged for this. Krishna is very kind, Krishna is very loving, he's a loving God, and he knows what we need, and he will provide it in due course if we serve him with sincerity and with great determination. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I leave, there is a few minutes left. If someone has any comments or questions or reflections. Rameshwara Prabhu, the mic is on this way.
Class, Hare Krishna. This is a topic that you could speak on for months, not just an hour. But I wanted to just I was thinking of just one point out of the whole subject. You have Kardama Muni, the son of Brahma, living in Satya Yuga, meditating for so many thousands and thousands of years till he reached the perfection of yoga. His perfection and sincerity was so great, the Supreme Personality of Godhead actually appeared before him. He saw God in that body, in that life. Clearly, we're not talking about someone like ourselves. And in spite of that, the text talks about he wasn't able to completely give up material desire, or Prabhupada uses the word lusty desire. This word lust is a very big topic to understand for devotees. Because, I'm sorry I'm talking to so much,
it's
but
great.
Because as devotees, as initiated devotees, and I'm assuming that that's our goal if you're not already initiated, you have to take 4 very, very sacred vows of what not to do, and 1 very sacred, or 2 very sacred vows of what to do. So included in the sacred vows, why we call it sacred vow? Because your guru's taking your karma in exchange for you taking that vow. This is not a light topic. Your guru is willing to take your bad karmic reactions on himself if you take those vows and live by them. So, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. So what does that mean? Illicit sex. And how does that fit into this whole topic of being married? For me, it's very clear that, and it's why grihasta ashram is also very, very difficult for a man, maybe for a woman also. You're not allowed to have sex in the grihasta ashram unless you and your wife have discussed and planned and want to have a child. That type of sex is not illicit. That type of sex is actually Krishna conscious sex. If there's such a thing as Krishna conscious sex, that's what it is. And any other sex where you haven't discussed with the wife and you're just feeling lusty, that's breaking a sacred vow. So devotees have to really think hard about the meaning of, don't think getting married means I can start having sex. That is a big fall down if that's how a man devotee thinks. And that would be abusive to the wife. So obviously we all think about these topics for many, many years or decades and decades. And illicit sex is a vow, and having sex in a marriage is allowed only when the wife and husband plan, agree, discuss that they want to have a Krishna conscious child. And then they do all kinds of prayers, which is so difficult while you're engaged in the act of procreation or creating a baby, to be thinking of God and not just yourself at that moment. Not so easy either, but there's so many instructions like that. But there's a difference between lusty desires of a Vaishnav and lusty desires of a non-devotee. So that was my main point. Don't abuse women and think that they're your servant for your sense gratification if you get married, please.
Thank you. Certainly we should enter the grihasta ashram in a spirit actually of wanting to give up those desires, not try to, wanting to purify those desires, not to fulfill them. I was thinking that the Lord was so pleased with Kardama that he shed tears, and that became Bindu Sarovara. So this verse, it kind of broadens our perspective on things. Things are not so black and white. He had a service to perform, and he asked for this. And what was the outcome of that union with his wife? The Lord himself appeared. So he was very pure.
So like disposition means wife is helping the husband stick to his vows. Husband is helping the wife stick to her vows. That's a perfect union. That's a perfect partnership between male devotee and female devotee, that you help each other in your spiritual life. Hari.
Thank you. There is a Prabhu, have a hand here.
Hare Krishna. This topic, like Prabhu said, is very important topic, and I have found very controversial. I'm just recalling I assisted a seminar by one of the initiating gurus of ISKCON on sexual sobriety for men. And the question was asked to him, and he's a grihasta. He preaches in the West. And the question was asked, how many people in our society, how many grihastas are able to maintain this principle? As Prabhu said, this topmost interpretation of what, It's one of your vows, but how many people are able to maintain that vow currently in our society? He was asked, and he said, and he knows, because he's a very knowledgeable devotee, he says, I would say that less than 10% of the grihastas can maintain this topmost teaching of the
Standard.
vow.
Yeah.
So what happens? Okay, well, now these days, if it's not 10%, it is very, very low percentage of the people that can actually maintain this interpretation of this principle. I asked another guru about this topic recently, because this is so important. So you mentioned about how many people in general society break their marriages, and you said about 50%. I have heard that, of course, we don't have the exact numbers, but in ISKCON we don't know much better.
Yeah.
Probably even worse. And perhaps the interpretation of this principle at the topmost for everyone trying to reach or maintain that vow and that standard might be the cause of so many breakdowns in marriages. So I asked this other very senior guru of your times, very senior, what is the meaning of this? How can we understand this principle? He said, sex life outside of marriage is illicit sex. Within marriage, brahmanas have a high standard. It's what Ridananda Maharaj told me. Well, the thing is that if you want to keep pushing this heavy duty standard, we're seeing the consequences, And if at 25 you get married, it's like you said yourself, living with the opposite sex is very difficult. So in the meantime, this has to be addressed, ultimately.
It's a hot potato, they call it, no? The hot potato. Yeah. So I won't go into the controversy, but I will give some verse which I think is very, very important for all the devotees. And actually, I don't know if you were here yesterday for a Kinchana Balaram's class. He gave a beautiful class in the previous verse, and he quoted that verse. So I'll quote it again. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, my devotee knows that sense gratification leads to a miserable result. But sometimes he cannot avoid it, and he indulges in it. And he sincerely repents these activities and happily continues with his devotional service. So, you can only work on your Krishna consciousness from the level you are at. Okay? You can only start, if you're going to go from here to Calcutta, you got to start from Mayapur. You cannot start from, Radhagat or some other place. We are where we are at, and it's perfectly fine. Okay? Now we endeavor, and sometimes we fail, we stand up, and we continue. Happily, sincerely, knowing that Krishna will help us. We should not become overly morose because we're not able to fulfill certain standards. At the same time, we should not use it as a license for now to one while, no? We should endeavor. But, you're both right. You're both right. The standard is the standard that Ramesh Prabhu is, but we need to work to that standard, and for most people, the reality is gradual. It's gradual. The reality is, that's 50 years of history of ISKCON, we've seen it. We should work towards it, create an environment which is favorable for cultivating Krishna consciousness, and that means now you purify your sex life. How? You have good kids, and you raise those kids in Krishna consciousness, and hopefully Krishna will rip apart, take away that desire. But you do the yagya, which is a big yagya. I've been brahmachari for many, many years, and I have been grihastha for some years, half of the time. I tell you, grihastha ashram, way more difficult. Way more difficult. But it's needed. For some people it's needed. So we do. And we just have to, the sincerity is in our, determination to continue no matter what. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes in the purport of that verse, by the way, that's 11th canto, 2nd chapter, text 27, 28. Write it down, go to your books and read it and memorize it, because it's very important. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that actually I may have to go to hell because of my sinful life, but I will never ever give up my determination to serve you. Even if I have to burn in hell for millions of lifetimes, I will not stop. So we should never give up the hope. And another very important verse in this connection, 331 Bhagavad Gita. Okay, this is Prabhupada's purport directly. 11th canto is not Prabhupada's purport, it's his disciple. But 331, Prabhupada says that on the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not be able to follow all the standards. But if one doesn't resent the principle, doesn't resent the principle and continues with it, his success is guaranteed. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jani Tagore Premanande. Thank you very much. Hare